Oh.
Yes, I will start with a little thought experiment.
Yes.
I want it to be expressive.
Yes.
And hopefully, at the end of the thought experiment, we will understand the main point of my presentation. So, what do we see on the picture?
Chaos.
Chaos.
Ouch.
Let's be a bit more specific.
Pain.
We see pain. We
Yes.
see two cars smashing into each other.
Yes.
Now we presume there are people, drivers at least, in the cars. So there might be death or injury, right? There is shattered glass and so on. So it's quite clear what's happening. How would you respond to this situation if you were the bystander?
Where's the life? The life saved.
Okay, so you would probably pick up your phone, right, and call the emergency.
Yes.
Police, correct? And that would be the sensible thing to do, a natural thing to do. But here is the challenge of the situation, or the challenge of the situation analysis. So we think, first of all, what are the visible facts of the situation? What can we see directly? And then on the basis of those facts, we construct a certain narrative of the situation. So what is happening here? What is the immediate narrative? And then we approach the question, how should we respond? But I argue that we need to think about, we need to critically check about presuppositions that we come to the situation with. How did our meta-narrative assumption affect our assessment of this precise situation? What is going on? And the deliberation of our appropriate response will be based on that meta-narrative assumption. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, what if the situation is the following? It's not really a real-time event, but rather it's a staged event. You are in Hollywood. You are filming the movie Matrix or something, right? And you come to the situation, you see the same details, you see the same facts, empirical facts, but the meta-narrative, okay, is different. It's not a real-time event, but rather it's somebody is shooting a movie. So what do? Do you pick up your phone and do you call the police? Probably not, right? Instead what you do is you clap your hands. And you say, well, wonderful, what wonderful special effects. You no longer fear that somebody got hurt, because you know that the whole event is staged. So again, what are the visible facts? What can we see directly? What is happening? How do we construct the immediate narrative of the situation? But then, if we want to really understand what's going on and what our response should be, we should ask the second critical question: what is the larger narrative of the situation? And that will help us answer the question how we should respond. So maybe we can depict it in the following way: from raw knowledge to applied wisdom. So we have raw data, and there is the challenge of epistemology. How do we understand these things? The challenge of hermeneutics, their interpretation, and then the challenge of purpose, or of understanding the wider context and aligning ourselves with the wider context. And we can think of reality in this complex way as ethics, epistemology, and aesthetics being together. Good, truth, and beauty can come together and should be thought of together in a certain presupposed meta-narrative context.
Yeah.
So the questions we need to talk about is how much can we actually know about our reality? Do we ask the right questions? What is our presupposed meta-narrative framework, and what ideas and concepts do we derive from it, wittingly and unwittingly? I think this is quite important to ask these critical questions. And I want to propose that I want to talk about scientism, which is a Western phenomenon, really. And I want to propose that it's a reductionism that's unwarranted and actually that has very detrimental consequences. Scientism is a bold yet unsubstantiated conviction that modern science, modeled on the natural sciences, is the only source of real knowledge. Thus, anything that cannot be directly verified or falsified by scientific methodology does not constitute real knowledge and should be ultimately discarded. This is a very strong narrative in Western societies. And so when we talk about this axial age, I would contend that this narrative would go strongly against this notion. These people would want to argue a very different view of reality, and they would see the development of the world, hopefully, as approaching the scientific age, where everything can be verified. The problem, of course, is that this itself is a philosophical belief of scientism that cannot be verified or falsified by scientific methodology. It is an a priori assumption, a metaphysical statement. One can argue for a metaphysical position, but one can not prove it in the sense required by scientism itself. It is a valid, while limited approach to knowing, and as such it morphs into a dogma, an exclusivist ideology, which we call scientism. In many people's hearts and minds, it assumes its location within a closed world system, rooted in the worldview of materialistic naturalism. As Charles Taylor, when he commented on this closed immanent frame and the birth of modernity, he said, "We can come to see the growth of civilization or modernity as synonymous with the laying out of a closed immanent frame. Within this, civilized values develop, and a single-minded focus on the human good, aided by the fuller and fuller use of scientific reason, permits the greatest flourishing possible of human beings. What emerges from all this is that we can either see the transcendent as a threat, a dangerous temptation, a distraction, or an obstacle to our greatest good." Let me skip over some of these slides. This approach to knowledge is heavily weighted or biased toward the instrumental or mechanistic. It's a reductionism of truth, isolation of truth in good and beauty. But then we can ask critically, aren't there mysteries woven into art? Secrets that permeate artistic masterpieces, which are intrinsically inaccessible to systematic scientific scrutiny. Could it be that by losing the sense of wonder when confronted with beauty, we are impoverished in our ability to truly know and appreciate reality in all its marvelous complexity? And then also comes the question of virtue epistemology. Doesn't the character of the knower, i.e. the reflecting human subject, influence the method and acquiring knowledge and even its very content? So we come to a utopian vision of scientism. The growth of scientific knowledge allegedly guarantees social and political progress. Humans are seen to be flourishing and getting better because of science, technology, and medicine. The view is blind to the negative impact of science and technology. Scientism inherently assumes a warfare model in science-religion relations. It assumes that as science advances, religion and faith is culturally replaced or displaced, demoted in importance, eventually to the point of redundancy. I argue that the epistemological reductionism of scientism is not a scientific, but rather a philosophical belief, an a priori assumption, a metaphysical statement, in fact, that cannot be verified or falsified by scientific methodology. Scientism thus fails to pass its own methodological test. It is a myth derived from the meta-narrative of logical positivism that attempts to operate exclusively on induction, aspiring on the basis of the structures of formal logic to extract the real meaning behind our language as a disembodied and therefore objective reality, which I think is untenable in a post-Wittgensteinian world. Within a scientific outlook, this immanentist framework, knowledge depends on a designative versus an expressivist, poetic tradition of language. I think we need to notice that. Designative language traps the pursuit of wisdom within language and confines it to immanence, where language and its relationship to truth are reduced to pointing or representation. Why does it matter? Language, according to this approach, primarily designates objects in the world. The object is held and studied at a distance, observed but not participated in. One assumes a use of language based on quantitative judgments that are non-subject dependent, allegedly objective. This view of language contributes to scientism's mechanistic understanding of the universe, rendering it disenchanted. Instead, I wish to propose that science too depends on language, is linguistically embodied, and needs an operative narrative for the very scientific endeavor itself to make sense. Given the narrative, not merely a biological, but given the narrative nature of human identity. Thomas Kuhn says that every scientific methodology has an implicit meta-narrative, including that of logical positivism, and that this meta-narrative, or worldview, or hermeneutic approach, framework, dramatically affects the manner in which raw data is interpreted. Now, let's notice, he's not saying that these assumptions are wrong automatically, but he is saying, and we should notice this, he's saying that these assumptions are needed to be acknowledged as such and argued for in order to be accepted. So we can't come to a situation with some assumptions that we don't even question, we don't even realize we have these preconceived assumptions, and then start building our world, or whatever, our understanding of reality, without questioning these assumptions. Much like the philosophy or theology, science is a network of material practices, built environments, traditions of apprenticeship, and learned rituals that emerge over time in particular configurations in different places. So, epistemologically speaking, science takes place within a complex human tradition. What we are thus dealing with here, under the disguise of science in the metaphysical naturalism, is a distinct materialistic philosophy of reality, promoted dangerously as the only viable, that is, objective scientific account of reality. A hidden ideology is thereby portrayed as respectable science, causing people to lay down their defenses and to readily accept everything such science has to offer. The meta-narrative framework within which we exercise our epistemological activities determines much of their methodology, scope, and general character, including the nature and content of ensuing ethical deliberations. Thus, for example, the very fact that one is willing to take the step to investigate and analyze nature implies some things. For example, that one is interested in it, which means, among other things, that We are not Gnostics or consistent Platonists. We care about nature, we care about matter. Right? And that one is not afraid of it, which means that we don't live in cultures that perceive nature as a mythological space where harm can come to us. Right? So you don't dissect the animal, because what if an evil spirit jumps at you? Right? If indeed our scientific endeavor is not impartial, objective, and value neutral, then to arrive at the real knowledge of our world, we must see our epistemological scientific endeavors in the context of, and its codependence on, our individual and communal narrative identities, including the religious ones. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you very much, Professor Valţo. We have several questions here. Sarah first.
Hi, I really liked that and agree very much with with pretty much everything you said. I was just wondering, I have basically a suggestion for something that you may have read already, but also there was a question I was going to ask, which is, it seems like the scientism isn't actually speaking itself. It's not that people are going around saying, we're scientists, scientismists, and this is how we see the world. That's a very awkward phrase. And this is our, essentially our value system, and this is what we believe in. Most people who hold this view don't think that they hold this view until they're asked. They may say things to suggest that that's the fundamental way that they see the world, and I think that's certainly the case. A lot of people are in that position in the modern world. But I'm not sure that, I'm just wondering what you think about the idea that a lot of this is non-explicit, that it's about people's presumptions that aren't things that they outwardly would ever endorse, but are clearly wandering around with, about the legitimacy and the objectivity of science as a complete human task, the task that can resolve all of our problems and save us from ourselves as well. So.
Right, yeah, I think you're right. I think most people take it, they don't express it explicitly as their ideology, bragging about, this is what I believe in the world. Except for a few people, like maybe Christopher Hitchens or Richard Dawkins, they would even say that this is their religion. This is their mission in life, to sort of cure people of their mythologies and superstitions and so on. So they take it as, they're very explicit about it.
Yeah.
But most people simply take it as, this is the way, science is the answer, and all of this is just, religion or whatever philosophies, ethics, it's just a bonus.
Yeah.
But it's nothing, it doesn't really convey true knowledge.
Yeah, sure. My other suggestion was just whether or not you've read Husserl's Vienna lecture, because it seems to tie in very in an interesting way with what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know, I haven't.
It's in the Crisis of European Science and Transcendental Phenomenology, but he's got a lecture there about how we form the identity of the task of philosophy, and essentially he's talking about the task of science itself as well, and very much this idea that the narrative, that scientists need narrative. They can't ignore the fact that they're still humans doing a human practice in a context.
Right.
So, yeah, just thought that might be interesting.
Yes, thank you for pointing it out. And as I said already, the very fact that we are scientists and we deal with the study of nature already says something about our approach to the world, to reality. Right? So we bring our presuppositions to that endeavor with us.
And then the problem is not reflecting on it.
Right, precisely.
Not having
Please.
Yeah, thanks. Because I wanted to build into maybe your question, I understood as a question of self-consciousness about what you're doing and what comes out of that self-consciousness. And in reference to the identity of the knower, have you read Lorraine Coates' book, What Does She Know? It's a feminist critique of objective epistemologies, and it's really good. It targets the same kinds of questions, and I think just bringing up this book is a kind of answer also to Sarah, which is the point is transformation. It's a kind of transformation that is material and maybe more akin to the Tao in terms of transcendence, but it's transformation from patriarchy into community of equals. So in this sense, self-awareness serves as transcendence. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. And I will gladly supplement my bibliography with this stuff.
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation. I'd like to ask you, as a professor of theology,
Yes.
when we talk now of postmodernism, okay, we will find that scientific knowledge in contrast with religious knowledge. Okay, so as Descartes and Hans Gadamer, they say that language is an instrument to express the hermeneutic experience. So, in scientific knowledge, we use language. Also in religious knowledge, we use language. But terms in scientific language speak about facts. But terms in religious language speak about interpretation. So that significance is totally different from scientific knowledge and religious knowledge. How can we avoid this language as a means of interpretation?
Well, I think, first of all, you need to be open to other ways of knowing and appreciating reality. You know, it's not just our cognitive abilities, our ability to intellectually process data and make sense out of them. I mean, there's a
Okay, got a question. My colleague Jonathan.
Observation. You've been mentioning political alternatives to the scientific view, and I was thinking that instead of discussing assumptions in both fields, it would be more according to your presentation to see science also as a style of knowledge. So using a concept which comes from the artistic paradigm more than from the logical paradigm, the assumption and logical paradigm. And I also wanted to say that in my view, the scientific approach is not always disenchanting the view on the world. On the contrary, you can find a lot of passionate scientists who are by discovering more in scientific ways, they actually increase enchanting in the world.
Oh yes, yes. But there you have to distinguish between scientists who do science and scientism as ideology. And what I was referring to was scientism, not science as a lifestyle or whatever. But I said as scientism as an ideology would say, you know, this world is, should be, and must be disenchanted if you want to live in it, you know, fully, and if you want to be rid of superstition and so on. So that's what I was critiquing, not the scientists themselves, many of whom are believers, and they have no problem with. But I wonder if we can talk about a re-enchantment of the world, in the same sense that the world was enchanted, let's say, you know, in the 16th, 17th century. I wonder if we can talk about re-enchantment. I wonder if we need maybe a different category. And Charles Taylor would speak about openness. Instead of being trapped in an immanentist framework, or immanentistically understood world, he would say, you know, let's stay open to transcendence. And in that way we can sort of re-enchant reality. But not in the same sense as it was 300-400 years ago, before real modern science was born. So I think more discussion needs to take place there. But I did not, so just going back to your question, I did not say that just because I do science, I'm necessarily disenchanting the world.
Yeah.
I don't have to fall into the trap of scientism. Right, it's an extreme view.
Please now the last question. Oh, Professor
Okay, very quick is about the diversity issues. So I think we all agree with you the scientism is problem. So you open the door for different narrative count of reality. Now I'm asking you, what if there's a different type of narrative reality? Will you accepting that?
Yeah, I think we should lead a dialogue on the level of narratives.
Yes.
You know, of
Yes.
meta-narratives.
Yes. So you said from a raw knowledge to applied wisdom. So then there's many applied wisdom, many types.
Oh, yes.
So you don't looking for unified only people talking about the good, the beauty, and the truth. Because I want to see there's different type of narrative about reality.
And
they are also critique of scientism. So like acupuncture, right?
Yes.
So you allow them?
I do, yes.
Okay.
And I think we should set criteria, and yeah, we need this kind of dialogue, definitely.
Now, in order, thank you very much.